everyone, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah.
And it is still a thrilling episode, I will say that, but we are winding everything down now. Seasons are coming to an end in the build-up for the big tournament summer, so that's going to be fun. But we've still got a lot to talk about.
It's so funny, though. Like, it is, but they aren't. Because, I mean, the NWSL's going strong. Although, for those who didn't know, the NWSL is taking a break in July for said big tournament, which, by the way, when this episode drops, I believe will be 42 days away. The Women's Euros, if you don't already know what we're talking about, in Switzerland this summer. Of course, we'll have tournament coverage. Don't even ask us that question. That's I obviously love doing this on a weekly basis, but tournament coverage is my ultimate favorite thing we do.
I'm just excited because the time zones favor me this time.
They really do. And they really don't favor me. Being on the East Coast, they would be okay. Being on the West Coast, it's going to be rough. But that's okay. We're not there yet. But we are here to discuss. The NWSL's in full swing. The FA Cup final happened, and Chelsea have done the domestic treble. And guess what's this weekend, Allie?
Would it be the Champions League final?
It would indeed be. So we're going to preview that, of course. And we've got some hot topics as well. We're going to talk about the Scotland First Division. We're going to talk about a new investor in Chelsea women's football. Do we like it or do we not?
Yeah.
To be determined.
Time Chelsea.
All right. So let's get into it. The FA Cup final went down. Chelsea did the domestic treble. They won the FA Cup 3-0 over Manchester United to take home another piece of hardware. And Chelsea have officially done the domestic treble. Allie, does this make up for not making Champions League final?
I don't know. It's one of those things that all of those players, pretty much, apart from the youth, have won this before. So I don't know. If, because I mean, hardware's hardware and you'll take it. But at the same time, it's not, the one that you've been missing. It's like Millie Bright has got 6 FA Cup winners' medals. What she probably really wants is a Champions League winners' medal.
I'm sorry, Chelsea fans. I didn't mean to damper it. It is a huge accomplishment. Chelsea has done the domestic treble. We really did think United were going to put up a bigger fight than this. Chelsea wins 3-0. Do you think that's an accurate depiction of how the game went?
No, I genuinely don't. I don't, because I think the first half they were so evenly matched, and to be honest, Man United were on top, for especially the first 20. I would say it was all Man United, but Chelsea weathered it the way that Chelsea can.
I wouldn't say it was all United. I would have said it was pretty even in the first 20.
No, first 20 was very much more Man United than Chelsea, but Chelsea weathered it and then grew into the game. I do think that Manchester United were getting frustrated and therefore were doing silly things, and also getting frustrated at the lack of decisions going their way.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you on everything else, just on this first 20 business. This is where I think Chelsea, they're at a detriment because we expect them to come out and dominate. And if they don't, then we feel like the other team is dominating. And I actually think it was just simply an even match to begin with. It was just even.
I disagree, and I'll tell you for why. Because you can see that Man United had really studied what Chelsea did, and they didn't let them have their way. They didn't let them have the ball. You look at, I think it's Baltimore, every time she got the ball, she was dispossessed. Every single time in that first 20, that midfield was Manchester United's, even without Ella Toone, and we can come on to that decision in a little bit.
The one to not start Ella Toone.
Yeah, that was a choice, wasn't it, Mark Skinner? That was a choice.
I think we should come on to that as soon as possible.
Yeah.
When you finish this point, let's talk about
so
that.
I feel like that first 20 was definitely, and they had the more chances in the first 20, and they really think, but Chelsea weathered it, and then built on it, and then grew, and were the better team overall. But that first 20 was definitely for the red side.
We always talk about how it matters how it is going into halftime. And Chelsea getting a penalty kick in the 45th minute, going into halftime up 1-0. How much do you feel like that changed the game for United?
I think it really changed it because literally about maybe 5-10 minutes earlier, they had a very solid shout for their own penalty with Cuthbert taking down their player. And it was waved away. And in fact, the ball, it was given, they considered it was a handball. I think it was against Bizet. They gave it as a handball and gave the free kick to Chelsea, which I know really was riling up the Manchester United players. So they're already frustrated. It was a silly challenge. I'm sorry, Man United fans. It was a stonewall penalty. That was clear. Like, it was a leg kick out that Bizet did not need to do to bring down a player. And so it's a stonewall. And that is going to screw with the mentality, because going in 0-0 to Chelsea is a good result. Going in 1-0 down to Chelsea is not a good result.
For me, this stat really tells the whole story of the game, because you look at shots and shots on target. Chelsea's 12 shots, 6 on target. United 5 shots, 2 on target. We talked about the first 20. I feel like that, for me, is a perfect picture of the first 20. United played up to Chelsea, but they didn't have dangerous opportunities. And you got to do 2 things to beat a team like Chelsea. A, if you're going to only have 2 shots on goal, you have to make sure that your effectiveness, your efficiency is like 100%. If you have 2 shots on goal, you got to score like 2 goals. Or you just simply have to create more dangerous opportunities, and they just were not dangerous enough. You can possess the ball, you can play them, back and forth in the midfield, but if you can't create a dangerous opportunity, that's what's just going to happen. You're going to lose that game. Let's talk about Elatoon. And then subsequently, what the future of Mark Skinner is, maybe, at Manchester United.
Well, his future's solid. He's signed until 2027. Like,
that's right, I forgot.
Like, he's signed a 3-year extension. That's another point.
That happened a while ago, though. Like, he could still maybe be fired.
I doubt that severely, just because of who the team is and how little their team
how little they care.
They care. And case in point, you look at it, like the Chelsea contingent that came to this, that was like investors, owners were all there. You had one owner of the Manchester United, one of the Glazer brothers was there, and somebody that was involved in the women's team. That was it. There was no other brother. There was no Sir Jim. There was no one.
Plus, they made Champions League, so I think that they'll look at that and be like, great, we made Champions League. Done and done.
Yeah, we came third. We made Champions League. We got to another final. They're going to think so. But not starting Elatoon when she is one of the most creative midfielders that you have. And how many times have we said that games are won and lost in the midfield? It was a choice. It was certainly a choice of Skinner's to not play her. I don't understand why.
Well, he spoke about the choice and why. And it's a stupid reason.
Go for it, because I haven't heard this yet. Go on, what was Skinner's wonderful reason why not starting Elatoon?
He said he wanted to have a game changer coming off of the bench. But here's the thing with that. It's that if you're already down to Chelsea, it doesn't really matter who's coming off of the bench. This is a game that you need to get out in front of and not work back from behind. And I thought it was a really stupid reason to start Elatoon on the bench. I will never agree with saying you are one of our best 11 and so you will come off of the bench. It just makes literally no sense to me.
That is a stupid reason. Because again, I can understand if it's like you're holding, I don't know, a West Ham to a 0-0 and you need someone to push it to that next level. But Chelsea's not that.
No, I'll never understand it. I think it was a terrible decision. I do think it impacted the game. I don't know. I feel like perhaps Mark Skinner is feeling like Grace Clinton and Elatoon just don't play very well together.
They don't. That's the thing, though. I agree they don't. And as things stand, I would start Toon over Clinton, if that's the case, because I have seen such a drop off of Grace Clinton, and we can talk about that, but I've watched a lot more Man United games this season because of the friends that I have, and they're saying that there's this drop off with Clinton compared to how she was at Spurs last season, and her and Tooney are not compatible at the moment.
No, they're not, and she just hasn't found her footing at United. Yeah.
No.
All right, so Chelsea do it. They win the domestic treble. They win the FA Cup final. Congratulations, Chelsea. Congratulations, Chelsea fans. And they have a brand new owner. Alexis Ohanian, husband to the one and only Serena Williams. The two of them have bought in as co-owners of Chelsea Women's FC. Allie, I think we both are very confused about how we feel about this. Is that accurate?
I'm very conflicted. And again, before I get, you just hate Chelsea. It's not that. I think it's great that we're seeing outside investment, that we're moving away from the need to be built up against a men's team. I do. I think that it's its own product. I think that's wonderful. I think that's great. Does Chelsea need this investment? No. No, they do not, because they're already...
Well, that's not what bothers me.
Well, no, I'm like, if you're going to pick a team to invest in, why are you picking the team that's already well looked after, well invested, you know?
Oh, you're upset with the two of them, where you're like, really? If you're going to invest in women's football, like, go give money to a team that needs it.
Why are you not picking on Spurs? Why are you not picking, you know, an Arsenal, even like a West Ham, even like go lower like Michelle Kang did and pick a championship team? Why are you investing in a team that is already well looked after, well invested, you know, one of the best in the world already? Why have you picked that? That's what rankles me. I'm like, I think it's great that we're seeing outside investment. I just wish it was a different club, because that 20 million that they've bought in and invested could do wonders at a Tottenham, would do wonders at, you know, a Brighton. If we're dropping down, could be the one that pushes Birmingham City back into the WSL. There is so many different teams that could benefit from that 20 million that Chelsea, great, that might pay some wages for, you know, half a year, but is it going to have the same level of impact? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really hadn't thought about that. It really does kind of speak to this idea of like, okay, if you really do believe that if you invest in women's sports, you will see the returns, the way to truly put your money where your mouth is like you said, to do what Michelle Kang has done and basically invest in a lower tier team, pour money into it that's much needed, and say, hey, look, see what we can do when we have the money that is needed to pay for players, pay for athletic trainers, pay for facilities and everything that these professional athletes need to be professional athletes. I really do get that. Yeah. I thought it brought up just a more interesting point where we're starting to see now more Michelle Kang types, in the sense that they're also owners of Angel City. So now they have co-ownership in the NWSL and in the WSL. Michelle Kang has ownership now in 3 leagues. They now have ownership in 2 leagues. So we're starting to see more and more of that, which I know you are really not a fan of.
Not particularly, no, because again, it's that player welfare thing. Because does that unduly influence transfers? Does that mean that, you know, they've got a great player at Angel City, they want to bring them to Chelsea? Does the player lose that autonomy because it's like, well, you're just being switched from club to club because it's owned by the same people? So yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. But I think there's definitely an autonomy issue when it comes to owning multiple clubs.
To be fair, it does seem like their end goal is very different than Michelle Kang's. Like, Michelle Kang is very in the weeds. She wants to grow a team. She wants to be invested in the players and the personnel. She's very clearly super involved in the soccer side of it, right? These two, and especially Alexis, I think, who was the main name on it, seem to be more what he is. He's an investor. He's going to put money at it. He's going to show up at some games. He's not going to be invested in the soccer side of it. He's not going to have his hands in the weeds. And those are very different things, obviously, too, because he's a co-owner. He's not the sole owner. They're not the managing owners. It is very different. It is really just like venture capitalism at its finest. And can we really blame him for it? We really can't. I do wish that he had invested in a lower tier team, or just a team that was lower in the WSL. I really, really do. I do think this is like, if you are a venture capitalist, this probably is the team that you're going to look at and be like, yeah, that's the best team to invest in to get big returns. So that literally might be what the answer is.
That's what it feels like. It feels like they're investing to get their money back.
Yeah, which is what they do as venture capitalists. So it is hard to be mad. I can't put my finger on why, I couldn't put my finger on why it kind of bothered me, Allie, because, you know, we've talked about Michelle Kang, and it didn't bother me as much as it bothered you that she has ownership in multiple different leagues. So I was like, it's not that. What is it? But you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it was. It was like, really, in Chelsea, there's so many other teams. And I just would have loved them to invest in a team that, yeah, it would have taken longer to see their returns. But if you're really investing in it, it would have happened.
Especially when we're seeing so many teams fold due to financial pressures. We talked about the fact that Reading have gone down. We talked about Wolves not investing in theirs. Somebody did a stat about teams that used to be in the WSL, and 3 of the teams that used to be in the WSL are now tier 5 or below, and that's Donny Bells, Yeovil, and Reading. So there's so many that are now tier 5 or below.
Before we end this segment, Chelsea fans, to make sure we give credit where credit is due, congratulations on the domestic treble. It was an incredible season, ending undefeated in the WSL, ending with 3 trophies, all 3 of the domestic trophies that you could get. You got, what a year. Truly, one for the history books for Chelsea.
Over to this weekend, and it is finally here after what it feels like weeks and weeks of waiting. It
feels like it's been ages.
It feels like it's been forever, but it's the Champions League final this weekend. Arsenal will take on Barcelona in Lisbon, in Portugal. It's got a 50,000 seat capacity, this stadium. Looks like it's...
Yeah, I was trying to look up how many tickets were sold. I couldn't find it, but I did go to the website to try to purchase a ticket just to see if I could see which categories were sold out. Category 2 was the only one sold out. These tickets are so affordable, you guys. The most premium ticket, I'm talking behind the benches, halfway line, super close in, €70. And I know that's a lot. Okay, well, I'm speaking to US fans right now because for you, it's very different over there. For us, we're going to pay that on a regular basis to go to a game, unfortunately. And now we're talking about a Champions League final game. And I do think if you cross-reference that maybe with what a men's Champions League final costs, it's affordable.
It's super affordable. The problem is he's trying to get there because as someone who works in travel, the amount of friends going, can you get us flights to Lisbon? I'm like, no.
Okay. I didn't ask you to get me a flight to Lisbon.
No, but I'm just saying there's so many that it's like, can you get a flight? No, they're all very, very much sold out.
Yeah, those prices went up the second Arsenal one too. All right, so let's talk about it because it is going down this Saturday, May 24th, 9 a.m. Pacific, if you're in the West Coast of the U.S. What is that? Noon Eastern and 5 p.m. if you're in the U.K. I did all of that. If you're in another time zone, you're going to have to do that yourself. It's going down. Arsenal against Barcelona. 18,000 tickets were reserved for each team's fans. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of traveling fans going. Obviously really close for Barcelona fans. What do you think, Allie? What do you think here?
What I think is going to happen. Mm-hmm. I think I will defer to the Arsenal fans I saw on my timeline, it was so nice for Barcelona to have an open practice because they beat their last team 6-0 in the last game of the La Liga season. As much as I would like it to not be Barcelona, I can't see Arsenal doing it. And I'm sorry, Arsenal fans, let me offend the red side of London. I can't see you doing it. I genuinely can't.
I can see it. It's going to take the best performance from Arsenal all season. It's going to take the best performance from every player on the pitch. It's going to take the best tactics, the best strategy. It is going to take a day in a game where everybody performs at their ultimate peak and everything comes together perfectly. It could happen. It could happen. Do I think the odds are in their favor? No. I think that the odds are very much in Barcelona's favor. We've talked about this particularly with Arsenal. It's all going to come down to how many mistakes are Arsenal going to make at the back and how many are Barcelona going to punish them for. And that's going to be the difference maker. All right, you think it's going to Barcelona. We got to do a prediction. What do you think's the final score?
I think it's going to be a repeat of what they did to Chelsea 4-1.
I knew you were going to say 4-1. The 4-1 just popped into my head. It's not going to be a repeat of what they did to Chelsea.
No, it could be worse because let's look at what Arsenal did domestically, the last 3 games that they played domestically.
Yeah.
It was a shower. It was absolutely awful.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Here's the thing. I think that people could look at this game as Arsenal fans and think Arsenal are going to have to play a very tight back line, but I think it needs to be the opposite. You look at all of the other Champions League games that they've played, and they've played better in League 2 because they've been forced to be more open and run the field. And if they can do that, I think that's what provides them the chance. You have to run the field, you have to be more open, and then you have to not make mistakes on the backside, but you can't play tight lockdown. Let's try to make sure that we just like keep it to 0-0. You can't play like that if you're Arsenal. So I think that provides them the best opportunity to win this game. So with that being said, that kind of lends itself to a lot of goals maybe being scored on either end. I think it's going to be closer. Maybe we're looking at like a 3-2 Barcelona. You don't think Arsenal can even get 2?
No.
I do. I think it's a 3-2 Barcelona, unfortunately. But go Arsenal. When did I turn into such a negative fan, Allie? I feel like you've rubbed off on me. Before I met you, I was just like, of course my team's going to win. Because then you're never disappointed. Of course my team's going to win.
Then you're never disappointed. Because if you think you're going to lose and you do lose, you're like, well, I thought that was going to happen. And if you think you're going to lose and then you'll win, it's a delight. So therefore...
I think everything changed in 2023 for me.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's move it along. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To France, and Lyon are your French champions after a massive 3-0 win over PSG, leading to Lyon's 18th league title.
And finally to Mexico, La Liga MX Femenil have a champion in the Clausura. Pachuca are the champions of the Clausura after they beat America in the first leg 3-0 and then lost 2-0 in the second leg of the final. The aggregate was 3-2 at the end of all of it, and Pachuca take down America to be the champions of the Clausura.
Over to Australia, and in a thrilling final, the Central Coast Mariners took down Melbourne Victory to be your A-League champions. The game finished 1-1 in regulation time, but it was the CCM who took the title on pens 5-4.
Let's talk NWSL. Let's do it. There's a lot to discuss here, Allie. And of course, it has to be the showdown between the number 1 Kansas City and the then number 2 Orlando Pride. But before we get into that, there were a lot of updates and stuff after the Savvy King incident last week, which we discussed on last week's episode, Allie. After all was said and done, the NWSL Players Association released a statement basically saying that that game should not have continued. The NWSL said that they were launching an investigation, not an investigation, excuse me. They were looking into their policies, their protocols, and they were using this as a time to, look at this and see if it needed to be changed. They came out then a few days later with a statement that basically said, we are going to change this policy. And then they both released a joint statement essentially saying that, because this happened, the Players Association asked the league to look into it. They made the changes, and that's the sign of a really symbiotic relationship. And everybody seems to have gotten what they wanted out of it. I personally am so glad that they amended this. The fact, we talked about this last week, the fact that that game continued, I know I personally would not have been able to go on and play and pretend like that game mattered. So I'm happy that they were able to make these amendments to the rules.
Yep. And so we've had a statement from the player herself that she is doing well. It appears that it was a heart issue, which I had a feeling it was when she went down off the ball. And so they've corrected the heart issue and she is recovering and is grateful for everybody's well wishes. And we here at the Woso Show send her all of our best as well.
Love it. Megan Burke, the executive director for the NWSL Players Association, released in a lot of her statements and her interviews. She said, quote, "We're human beings and this is a simple matter of humanity." And then the NWSL Players Association statement read that the league's acknowledgement that the game should have ended and its commitment to adopting this protocol for the future, should it ever be needed, represents a meaningful step forward, and it is a change made possible by the strength and unity of our players. I will say, this is kind of the fastest I've seen the Players Association and the NWSL, like the PA and the league, work together on something. So I was happy to see that and see that happen so quickly.
So the game we have to talk about was Orlando versus KC. Now KC took it 1-0, but we do have to look at the downfall that's happened to Orlando because they've
downfall's a strong word.
It's a strong word, but it is because they went undefeated for so long and had so many shutouts last season, and now first half of the season was decent. It's 4 wins.
Decent.
That's decent. That's what you want.
I'd say it was really good, yeah. Undefeated in 4 games to start the season. Solid, yes.
And then the last 5 games is 1 win, 3 losses, 1 draw. What's going on?
I think that's what Orlando fans are all wondering as well, to be totally honest. You look at what they've been able to do in the last few games and who they've lost to as well. Coming into this game, because of how they've been performing, I really did think this was going to be a much different game than it ended up being. It was, in my opinion, very even, very back and forth, very much indicative of the scoreline that you see in 1-0 towards Kansas City. But going into it, I thought it was going to be really different because of how Orlando had been playing. They lost to Washington Spirit. That wasn't a surprise. I mean, Washington had been really good. It was a bit of a surprise, but it wasn't like, oh, wait, hold on. The 1-0 loss to Portland was the shock, a 1-1 draw to North Carolina, and now, of course, the 1-0 loss to Kansas City. And when you look at it like that, it's not as scary as I think it may sound when you say, oh, it's been 3 losses and a draw. And because you look at who they've been playing, Portland, while they started not great, they've been fantastic of recent. Listen, I think it's a few things for Orlando. And I think it is a good question of should they be worried? What is going on here? First and foremost, it was said on the commentary in the broadcast, the starting lineup that Orlando put out against Kansas City, that was the 7th different lineup in 9 games. And I think we just kind of have to start there because it's really hard to develop any kind of momentum as a soccer team when you just don't have the same lineup every game on a game-to-game-to-game basis. Would you agree?
100%, especially for your backline and things like that, where the relationship is so important and that chemistry is so important. That's crazy that they've tinkered with it that much.
I do think that is part of it. I think the good news for Orlando is that they're still scoring goals. They're not the biggest goal scoring machine that they were last year. They're not putting, a million away every game. They were held to 0 goals against Portland and now 0 against Kansas City. They scored just 1 against North Carolina. They were also held to 0 actually against Washington Spirit. They can still tuck them away, but listen, I think the way to understand what's happened to Orlando is to contrast it with who they just played in Kansas City. Because Barbara Banda is a superhuman being in terms of what she's able to do on the soccer field. What she did last year is unprecedented. And everybody's had an entire offseason to try to learn how they're going to play and stop Barbara Banda, which for a lot of teams means we're going to put 2, maybe 3 defenders on Barbara Banda. We're going to track her constantly. We are going to make sure that if Orlando beats us, it's not because Barbara Banda beats us. And they've started to figure out how to do that. And what's happened with Orlando is that they just haven't found the second threat. What is the secondary threat that can either detract defenders from Barbara Banda or score instead of her? It's still kind of all on Barbara Banda. Versus, you look at Kansas City, they still have a ton of threats on that squad. A ton of goal-scoring threats for Kansas City. Obviously, there's Temwa Shawinga, but Lola Bonta, an underrated goal-scoring threat. Excellent celebrations. We all know this. Debinya, I mean, you just look at who's in this lineup and who can do some of the work. Obviously, the Brazilian Beatrice Jouot, she's playing that center forward position. She's detracting from Temwa Shawinga. There's a lot there. And then I think another huge move that Kansas City made that maybe Orlando didn't was in the midfield role as well, to control the game so that they could add another dimension to their game that wasn't just counterattacking.
So let's talk about that then, because Orlando's midfield is still pretty damn solid.
Truly, very solid. I mean, I think some of this is also in the formation. Obviously, Orlando's playing it's kind of like a 3-5-2, if you will, with a 3-back. So they've got a lot in the midfield. But again, I think that the biggest addition for Kansas City has been Claire Hutton in the midfield. And I think that she has been a game changer in a way that Orlando's midfield, they can move the ball around, they can progress the ball up. But what Claire Hutton is able to do in adding a defensive element and also adding this possession to the Kansas City Current. So they don't have to just go straight forward. They don't have to just rely on Temo Shonga. They can hold the ball and they can possess in the attacking third. And you have a player like Claire Hutton, who in my opinion has probably been one of the biggest additions of any team this off season. You don't have to play as transitionally. And I think that's been the biggest change for Kansas City that Orlando haven't leaned into yet. They have the midfield for it, but I don't necessarily think they've leaned into it enough.
Can we very quickly talk about San Diego? Flipping the script. Let's talk about San Diego very briefly, because they started the season and I thought, oh, here we go. It's becoming a bit of a pattern. But they're now second after their win this weekend. They're only 1 point above Orlando, but good times happening for San Diego right now.
They have been one of the more confusing. They've been like a case study, kind of like how Aston Villa was a case study for us, Allie. I feel like San Diego have been a team that everybody's looking at and been like, I am very confused and also interested in San Diego, because we all know the head coach, Jonas Eidevall. I will say, I haven't watched enough San Diego games in the past few weeks to really dive into what's been going down. But we should get into this more next week, because yes, I mean, San Diego has 2 losses on the season. Their 2 losses are to Orlando and Kansas City. But they now find themselves in second place, just 1 point above Orlando. And they have been very solid of recent. So maybe something for us to dig into next week, Allie. And finally, over to Scotland. We have a new champion of the Scottish League, Allie.
We do, and for the first time since 2006-2007, the team isn't based in Glasgow. I don't think people understand how huge that is. Yeah. So Hibernian Hibs are an Edinburgh-based team, and they are our new Scottish champions, and they took it to the final day. They had to beat Rangers in order to take the title, and that's exactly what they did. This is a huge moment in Scottish women's football, because, as I mentioned, literally Glasgow City had 14 straight titles until they Rangers and Celtic both took a title each. So they have been the dominant 3, and we're now seeing a significant investment in Hibs by their owners into their women's team, and it's paid off. It's paid dividends that they've now got their first title in modern Scottish League history, and their first title since that 2006-2007 season, nearly 20 years.
First of all, it's wild that that's 20 years ago. But we just talked about Claire Hutton. She was born in 2006.
Oh,
so
shush.
I officially feel old. So that's obviously one Champions League spot. Who secured the other one, and how do you feel like, as this season has now come to a close, let's look ahead a little bit, Allie.
So the second space actually went to Glasgow City because they managed to win over the weekend. So back for them, in their shining glory, back into the Champions League. Looking forward, it's going to be interesting, because as much as investment that Hibs has had, they haven't got as much investment as the 3 Glasgow teams. They just haven't. I'm hoping this means that they'll be able to bring in some players in the off-season, because you can say to them, we've got Champions League football. And because they won the league, it's not the silly knockout nonsense. They actually go.
That's right.
They can go straight in and play Champions League football.
How do you feel like they're going to fare in that round of Champions League football?
Oh, it scares me for them, because they do need to invest massively in some more talent, because they were the underdogs. They were like 4th for a really long time, and then they really pushed on the last half of the season, which is why I want to bring attention to this league. And we saw it with Celtic, in the fact that Celtic put a lot of focus on the Champions League and then ended up 4th in the main league, we really saw their season drop off during the group stages of Champions League, because that is where all of their focus was on. And to be honest, they're lucky they got 4th because of how badly the drop off was during that.
I wish everybody could have seen your face when you said that. It was a look of utter disgust.
I don't know what you're talking about. So I feel like Glasgow City are a bit more prepared for Champions League, because they've been there, done that. They've got the players, for anybody who doesn't know, Glasgow City is a very well-established, well-known team in the Scottish League. Again, an independent team. They are not based off of a men's team. They are their own entity and have been their own entity for a long time. So I feel like they're better prepared than Hibs. But it'll be interesting to see what business Hibs can do in the summer.
Yeah. It's all about building now.
Absolutely.
And so this is the Scottish First Division, obviously. So let's take a look from the top to the bottom. What's happening at the bottom and who was going down?
So we're seeing that Queen's Park and Dundee United have been relegated, which to be honest was on the cards, because if you look at the points difference, it's like they got 7 and 10 points, and then the next team above them got like 20 odd, and then the team above that got like 40 odds. So there was a big gap. I want to just highlight Queen's Park just for a minute, because we've seen that as per their men's team are in trouble, like financially they're not very secure. And there's been rumours going around that one of the ways that cost saving measures that they're going to do is scrap their women's team completely.
Ugh, why is that always everybody's first answer?
I know, but that's what it seems to be, is that at the moment it could be that they go down to part-time because they're going to be in Division 2, so they're still going. But we'll keep you informed. But at the moment, it does look like it could be the end for Queen's Park.
I have an idea. What if you scrap the men's team?
Surely that would save you a hell of a lot of money.
I think it would actually save you more money than scrapping the women's team. Just throwing that out there.
On a slightly nicer note, we have our winner of the second division, who's going to be playing in the Scottish Premier League as it was. The Hamilton Academicals have been promoted and will be playing next season.
What a name.
I know. The Scottish teams have the best names.
The Academicals. And that's it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. Tune back in next week. I'm so excited. Next week, Allie, we're going to do Champions League Final and NWSL. Listen, NWSL fans, I know you've been holding on tight. I know you've been sitting there like you always talk about it at the end. There's been a lot happening for the end of the season, for the conclusion of the season. We do the same thing in the fall when the NWSL is coming to a close. We focus on the NWSL and we kind of like push the WSL to the back of the show because they're just starting, okay? So we're almost there. Next week, unless something crazy happens, it's going to be Champions League Final and NWSL. Does it get much better than that? For us here at the Women's Soccer Show, as always, tune into our Patreon for extra content. Allie, you want to tell them what News in 10 is this week?
News in 10, we are going to talk about another rebrand. As somebody pointed out on social media, this rebrand is the worst rebrand they've seen since last Monday. We will get into all of that, as well as talking about this 7-a-side tournament that is happening with your main clubs. What is it? Do we like it? Is it just a cash grab? You have to subscribe to News in 10 to find out.
All right. And that's it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show. I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.